For centuries, America has asked, why don't you just go back to Africa? But for black Americans, the answer has always been the same. This is our home. David Walker declared in 1829.
America is more our country than it is the whites. We have enriched it with our blood and tears.
Frederick Douglass stood firm against colonization schemes.
This is our country, and we will stay here. If it is not fit to live in, we will make it so.
Henry Highland Garnet reminded the enslaved of their birthright.
Forget not that you are native-born American citizens, and as such, you are justly entitled to all the rights that are granted to the freest. Think how many tears you have poured out upon the soil which you have cultivated with unrequited toil and enriched with your blood.
Samuel Cornish proclaimed,
You are colored Americans. The Indians are red Americans, and the white people are white Americans, and you are as good as they are, and they are no better than you. God made all of the same blood.
Harriet Tubman, who risked her life for freedom, declared,
We're rooted here, and they can't pull us up. We have watered this soil with our sweat, tears, and blood. Our ancestors built this land, fought for it, and died on it. America is not just where we live, it is who we are. Our roots run deep, and no one can pull us up.
In America, every community waves its flag with pride. Irish, Italian, Mexican, Jamaican, the list goes on. But did you know Black Americans also have a flag? A flag that represents our unique story, born right here in the United States. It's called the Black American Heritage Flag. The Black American Heritage Flag was created in 1967 by Melvin Charles and Gleason T. Jackson. They wanted a symbol for descendants of enslaved black people in the United States, people whose roots run deep in this land. And while there were attempts to erase our history, they failed. We are still here, and we built a culture that is uniquely our own. The design is bold and powerful, red and black stripes, symbolizing pride, resilience, and the blood shed in the struggle for freedom. A gold sword and wreath in the center, representing pride, honor, and the fight for justice. The colors themselves echo both struggle and triumph, pain and pride. Unlike the Pan-African flag, which connects us to Africa, the Black American Heritage Flag is unique to our story in America. It represents the generations who built this nation, endured slavery, survived Jim Crow, and continue to fight for equality today. Every community that comes to America brings their flag with them. But Black Americans whose ancestors didn't come by choice have one too, a flag born from struggle, pride, and survival. The question is, how many of us even know it exists? And what would it mean if we all raised it together as a living symbol of who we are, what we've endured, and the strength we still carry forward? This is our history. This is our heritage. And this is our flag.
What if I told you that long before the Civil War, a hidden black army fought the United States and won? This is the untold story of the Gullah Wars. In the vast salt marshes and barrier islands along the coasts of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, a unique black-descended culture took shape, the Gullah Geechee people. Their story is not just about mere survival, it's about uncompromising resistance. Descended largely from enslaved Africans brought to the south from the rice-growing regions of West Africa, their isolation allowed them to preserve much of their African culture, a vibrant heritage that still thrives today in their language, crafts, food, and songs. Some refused to live under bondage and escaped into the wild, into the deep marshes, isolated barrier islands, and the then-independent Spanish Florida. Here, they formed independent maroon communities, creating sovereign settlements of the free. The Gullah Wars were a series of rebellions, escapes, and alliances between enslaved blacks, free blacks, and Native Americans. It was a continuous, generational struggle for liberation. This was a war that stretched across decades, deliberately hidden in the shadows of American history. One of the most dramatic events was the Battle of the Negro Fort on the Apalachicola River in Florida. During the War of 1812, the fort became a powerful refuge for escaped slaves and free black freedom fighters. The United States viewed this sovereign black presence as an existential threat to slavery. In 1816, U.S. forces attacked it, killing hundreds. Even American military officers at the time admitted that this was not a simple skirmish, but a war led and fought by black freedom fighters. Even earlier, in 1739, the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina saw Gullah-speaking blacks rise up in one of the largest slave uprisings in the colonies. These acts of resistance, from South Carolina to Florida, are all part of what became known as the Gullah Wars, a continuous struggle for liberation that spanned generations. While mainstream history often credits the Civil War with ending slavery, the truth is that these earlier wars of black resistance helped to profoundly weaken the institution long before emancipation. The relentless, organized fight of the Gullah and their allies drained U.S. military and financial resources for decades. This was a total war against the plantation system. The Gullah Wars remind us that freedom was never given, it was taken. They fought in the dark swamps, under the moonlight, guided by the land and their determination to live free. The next time you hear about American freedom, remember the Gullah. Their courage helped shape it.
In the early 1800s, life for free black Americans in the United States was still dangerous and uncertain. In 1824, President Jean-Pierre Boyer of Haiti, which at the time ruled the entire island of Hispaniola, invited free black Americans to come and settle there. Hundreds accepted the offer. They boarded ships and sailed to the island, many settling in a place called Samana, on the northeastern coast of what is now the Dominican Republic. These families built churches, schools, and farms. They brought with them their language, culture, and faith. Even today, the descendants of those settlers in Samana still speak a form of English passed down through generations and maintain many black American traditions. This story is a powerful reminder that black American history is global, and it did not stop at the U.S. border.
In 1931, 9 black teenagers hopped a freight train through Alabama looking for work and a better life. But their journey turned into one of the most infamous trials in American history. The white women accused them of rape. Within days, the boys were arrested, tried, and all but one sentenced to death without real evidence. Their trial was rushed. The all-white jury deliberated for just a few hours before deciding their fate. It didn't matter that the story kept changing. It didn't matter that medical evidence didn't support the accusation. The Scottsboro boys were guilty because they were black. The case sparked protests around the world. The Supreme Court stepped in, not once, but twice, ruling that the boys had been denied fair trials. But it would take years, retrials, and endless appeals before most of them were freed. Some spent more than a decade behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. The Scottsboro boys case exposed the deep injustice of the Jim Crow South. It showed how quickly lies could destroy lives and how hard it was for black Americans to get justice.
What if I told you the first person to die for America's freedom wasn't a famous founding father, but a black man? His name was Crispus Attucks. In 1770, Boston was boiling with anger. British soldiers filled the streets, enforcing laws and taxes the colonists hated. Among the angry crowd that night stood a tall sailor, a man of African and Native ancestry who had escaped slavery years earlier. Crispus Attucks knew oppression firsthand. He worked the docks and ships of New England, fighting just to live free. On the night of March 5th, 1770, he joined other colonists confronting British troops outside the customs house. Shouts turned to violence. Snowballs, clubs, and insults filled the air. Then gunfire. Attucks was the first to fall, shot twice in the chest. That moment became known as the Boston Massacre, and his blood was the first spilled in what would become the American Revolution. The first man to die for our country's freedom was a black man. Attucks' death sparked outrage and unity across the colonies. His sacrifice lit a fuse that would lead to independence 6 years later. And yet, his name is rarely mentioned alongside Washington, Jefferson, or Adams. But let's be clear, we as black Americans were here from the very beginning. We were part of the fight for freedom before there even was a United States. Crispus Attucks proved that. He stood for liberty at a time when his own people were denied it. His courage reminds us that our story, the Black American story, is woven into the foundation of this country. Crispus Attucks wasn't just the first to die in the Revolution. He was the first to show that the struggle for freedom in America has always been tied to us. History is written by the victors, but what about the stories they didn't want you to know? Beneath the pages of your textbooks lies a hidden truth. Stories of Black Americans who shaped this nation in ways most people have never heard. Today, we unlock 10 of these hidden stories. Welcome to the Black Vault. 1. The first American town founded by free black people. Before the Civil War, a small town in Ohio called Rossville was founded entirely by free Black Americans. They built schools, churches, and businesses, proving that even in a country that oppressed them, Black communities thrived and created self-sufficient societies. 2. The Black Pharaohs of Egypt's 25th dynasty. Many don't realize that Black rulers once led Egypt. The 25th dynasty, known as the Kushite dynasty, ruled Egypt for nearly a century, influencing art, architecture, and military strategy, long before modern Western narratives claimed otherwise. 3. Robert Smalls, the hero who escaped slavery. During the Civil War, Robert Smalls, an enslaved man, commandeered a Confederate ship and sailed it to freedom. He didn't just escape. He delivered the ship to the Union, becoming a war hero and later a U.S. congressman advocating for civil rights. 4. The first Black-owned newspaper in America. In 1827, Freedom's Journal was founded in New York City. It was the first Black-owned newspaper in the United States, giving a voice to Black Americans when mainstream media ignored their struggles and achievements. 5. Black Cowboys of the Old West. Most Americans picture cowboys as white men, but 25% of cowboys were Black after the Civil War. They drove cattle, tamed wild horses, and shaped the Western frontier. Their stories rarely told in Hollywood films. 6. The Harlem Hellfighters of World War I. The 369th Infantry Regiment, known as the Harlem Hellfighters, spent more time in combat than any other American unit during World War I. Despite their bravery, they returned home to a country that still treated them as second-class citizens. 7. The Black soldiers who fought in the Revolutionary War. Thousands of Black men fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War. Some fought for freedom with the Patriots, while others were promised freedom by the British. Their contributions were crucial in shaping the outcome of America's independence, yet many are left out of textbooks. 8. The Negro League's hidden legacy. Before Jackie Robinson, there were thriving Negro Leagues baseball teams, showcasing incredible talent and innovation in the sport. These players built stadiums, trained future stars, and kept baseball alive in Black communities, a forgotten parallel history of America's favorite pastime. 9. Henrietta Lacks and Immortal Cells. Henrietta Lacks, a Black woman, unknowingly became the source of HeLa cells, the first immortal human cells used in medical research. Her cells have been critical in developing vaccines, cancer research, and countless medical breakthroughs, yet her story remained untold for decades. 10. Black inventors who changed America. Black inventors have shaped modern life, but many go unrecognized. Garrett Morgan invented the traffic signal. Sarah Boone improved the ironing board. Lewis Latimer helped develop the light bulb. Their innovations continue to impact us every day. These stories show that Black Americans have always been central to the building of this nation, yet so many of their contributions remain hidden. What other truths lie buried, waiting for us to uncover them? History isn't just what you're taught, it's what you're willing to seek.
What everyday object quietly saved Black lives? The answer might shock you. The washcloth. In ancient Africa, hygiene was sacred. In Kemet in Nubia, people used natural sponges, oils, and herbs in daily bathing rituals. But slavery tried to erase that. Enslaved Africans were often denied soap, clean clothes, even the chance to bathe. They faced lice, skin infections, and disease. So they adapted. They boiled animal fat and ashes to make soap. They turned scraps of rags into washcloths. They scrubbed, not for vanity, but for survival. That little square of cloth became a ritual, a way to protect their bodies, their dignity, and their families in a system built to strip all of that away. Generations later, when someone mocked washcloths as poor people's stuff, they missed the truth. The washcloth is survival turned tradition, a symbol of resilience, passed down for centuries. The next time you see one, remember, it's not just a cloth. It's history in your hands.
Imagine this. The phone in your hand, the map in your car, even the watch on your wrist. None of it would work without a Black woman. Her name is Dr. Gladys West. In the 1950s, she was one of only a few Black women working as a mathematician at the U.S. Navy. Her job? crunching massive amounts of data to model the exact shape of the Earth. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't in the spotlight. But her calculations became the blueprint for global positioning systems. Every time you use GPS to get directions, track a package, or even call a ride, you're relying on her genius. For years, her name was hidden, her story untold. But the truth is simple. Without Dr. Gladys West, the world would be lost.
In 1963, civil rights leader Medgar Evers was assassinated in Jackson, Mississippi. As the NAACP's field secretary, he fought to end segregation and for black voting rights. On June 12th, he was shot in his own driveway after returning home from a meeting. He was only 37 years old. His death shocked the nation, but his legacy lived on, fueling the movement that brought change to America. Medgar Evers gave his life for freedom, and his fight still inspires today.
They said it was impossible, an enslaved man stealing a Confederate warship in the middle of the Civil War, but that's exactly what Robert Smalls did. In 1862, while working as a ship's pilot in Charleston, South Carolina, Smalls and his crew took a daring chance. At dawn, while the white officers were asleep on shore, he put on the captain's uniform, raised the right signals, and calmly sailed the CSS Planter past Confederate forts and cannons. No one suspected a thing, and when the ship reached Union waters, he surrendered it, along with its cannons, ammunition, and secret codes. Robert Smalls didn't just win freedom for himself and his crew. He delivered the Union one of its greatest prizes of the war. And his story didn't end there. After the war, he was elected to Congress, fighting for schools, rights, and justice for his people. So when you think of courage, remember Robert Smalls, the enslaved man who stole a warship and steered his people toward freedom.
In 1863, an enslaved man named Gordon escaped from a Louisiana plantation and reached Union lines. When he arrived, doctors found his back covered in scars from countless whippings. Photographers captured this image, known as the Scourge Back. When published in Harper's Weekly, it shocked the world. No one could deny the brutality of slavery after seeing this photograph. Gordon went on to fight for freedom as a soldier in the Union Army. His scars became a testimony, a permanent reminder of the cruelty of slavery and the strength of those who survived it.
They tried to erase it from history, but enslaved Africans fought back, and some of the biggest revolts in history are barely remembered. In 1739, the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina saw enslaved Africans take up arms, marching toward freedom. They were eventually stopped, but their courage shook the colony and led to harsher slave codes. In 1811, the German Coast Uprising near New Orleans became the largest slave revolt in U.S. history. Hundreds of enslaved people rose up, armed with farm tools and weapons, marching toward the city before being brutally suppressed. In 1831, Nat Turner led a rebellion in Virginia, where he and a group of followers rose up against enslavers, though it was violently crushed. Turner's revolt terrified the South and sparked stricter laws to control enslaved people. And it wasn't just in the U.S. The Haitian Revolution of 1791 overthrew French colonial rule completely. Enslaved Africans defeated Napoleon's army and created the first free black republic in the Americas. These revolts remind us that freedom was never just given, it was fought for. What other revolts or uprisings do you think history has hidden from us?
Did you know a black American pilot once left the United States to fight for Ethiopia against fascism? His name was John C. Robinson, and history remembers him as the Brown Condor. In 1935, when Mussolini's Italy invaded Ethiopia, Robinson couldn't stand by. As a black man in Jim Crow America, he saw Ethiopia, the only African nation never colonized, as a symbol of pride and resistance for people of African descent everywhere. Defying racism at home and risking his life abroad, Robinson traveled to Ethiopia. He trained the country's first Air Force, flew dangerous missions against the Italians, and gave the Ethiopian people hope from the skies. But despite the courage of Robinson and the Ethiopian defenders, Italy's modern military eventually overpowered them, and Emperor Haile Selassie was forced into exile. Still, Robinson's sacrifice made him a hero in Ethiopia and across the African continent. After the war, he returned to Ethiopia to help build its aviation industry. In fact, Addis Abeba's International Airport is named in his honor. Bole International Airport, John C. Robinson Terminal. Robinson's story isn't just about one man. It's about solidarity, pride, and the global fight against oppression.
The historical record, as we've been taught it, often presents a simplified narrative. We are told a story that begins with a small number of enslaved Africans, around 350,000, and ends with a modern population of over 40 million Black Americans. This account, as you've observed, seems to defy the laws of demography. But when we pull back the curtain and look closer, we find a history far more complex and complete than the official story lets on. The traditional explanation, often repeated in history books, is one of extraordinary resilience and natural increase. Historians point to the unique demographic trajectory of the enslaved population in British North America and later the United States. Unlike the brutal conditions of the Caribbean or Brazil, where death rates were devastatingly high and required a constant influx of newly enslaved people to maintain the population, the conditions in the American colonies, while still horrifyingly inhumane, allowed for a measure of population growth. Enslaved women gave birth, and their children were, by law, born into the same bondage. This generational cycle, over the course of more than a century and a half, saw the initial group of approximately 350,000 multiply exponentially. By the time of the Civil War in 1860, census records show that the enslaved and free Black population had grown to nearly 4 million people. After emancipation, that population continued to grow, fueled by high birth rates, until it reached today's numbers. The math, when you calculate a consistent rate of growth over 4 centuries, does, in fact, hold up. The official narrative says this growth is a testament to an unparalleled demographic expansion. But what if the starting point was never as small as we were led to believe? What if the official history is missing key chapters? To find a more complete story, we have to look for a record that predates the arrival of the first English ships. We have to consider a history of a people who were not only victims of the transatlantic slave trade, but were also explorers, sailors, and even native inhabitants of the Americas. One of the most compelling and debated chapters concerns the possibility of pre-Columbian contact. Around the year 1311, the powerful West African Empire of Mali was led by a man named Abu Bakr II, brother to the famous Mansa Musa. According to the accounts of Mansa Musa himself, as recorded by Arab historian Al-Amari, Abu Bakr II was an ambitious navigator. He reportedly outfitted a fleet of hundreds of ships with men, supplies, and provisions and set sail into the Atlantic, determined to find its limit. He never returned. While this account remains a subject of intense academic debate, it opens a window to the possibility of West African knowledge of the American continents long before Columbus's voyage. If these accounts are even partially true, they suggest a presence of people of African descent on these shores more than a century before 1492. But the story of a hidden past continues even after Columbus's arrival. The history of Africans in the Americas isn't solely a history of slavery. From the very beginning of the European exploration and conquest of the continent, free and enslaved people of African descent were present. They came as sailors, navigators, and conquistadors with the Spanish and Portuguese. One of the most famous examples is Juan Garrido, an African-born conquistador who arrived in the Americas in 1502. He fought with Hernán Cortés during the conquest of Mexico in the 1520s, and his signature appears on official documents from that era. Africans also traveled with Ponce de Leon to Florida in the early 1500s and helped establish Spanish settlements in New Mexico. In what is now Chicago, the first recorded non-native person to settle there was a Haitian man of African descent named Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, who established a trading post in the 1770s. These individuals were pioneers, explorers, and settlers whose stories often remain on the margins of mainstream history. And then there is the deepest, most complex chapter of all, a history of a people whose roots in the Americas were already established. This is the story of Black Native Americans. For centuries, African and Native American peoples lived in close proximity, forging alliances, sharing culture, and intermarrying. Enslaved Africans who escaped their bondage often found refuge with Native American tribes, creating unique and powerful communities. The most well-known example is the Black Seminoles, a community that formed in Florida during the 1700s and 1800s. They were an alliance of escaped slaves and the Seminole people, who fought together against American encroachment in the 19th century in a series of bloody conflicts known as the Seminole Wars. This is a powerful, undeniable record of a people who were not only present, but were also a foundational part of the American landscape, often fighting for their freedom and survival on the front lines. Furthermore, this history also reveals a crucial point about how the Black population was counted. In the 19th century, under the prevailing customs of North America, the Black Seminoles, despite their mixed heritage and their own distinct identity, were often externally classified as Negroes by the U.S. government, particularly on census and tribal rolls. This act of reclassification folded a population that had its own unique, indigenous history into the broader Black demographic, further contributing to the official count and demonstrating that the numbers we see today are the result of not only population growth, but also complex racial politics and redefinition. When we consider these forgotten chapters, the potential for pre-Columbian voyages, the presence of free Africans in the earliest European expeditions, and the deep, enduring ties between Black and Native American peoples and their subsequent reclassification, the story changes. The base population of people of African descent in the Americas may have been far larger, and their roots far older, than the official narrative of the transatlantic slave trade suggests. The history of Black America isn't just a story of arrival and bondage. It is a story of exploration, resilience, and a people whose origins in the Americas may stretch back much further than we're told. And so we are left with a question that echoes through time. Is the history of a people's origin in America a simple, tragic story of forced migration, or is there a missing record of a people whose roots in this land are as old and complex as the continent itself? The answer, as the historical record slowly reveals, appears to be a much deeper and more extraordinary tale.
They didn't teach us this in school, but some of the inventions we use every single day were created by Black inventors. Garrett Morgan invented the three-light traffic signal, the red, yellow, and green system we still use today. He also created an early version of the gas mask that saved countless lives. Madam C.J. Walker was one of the first self-made female millionaires in the U.S. She revolutionized Black hair care with her line of products and built an empire that empowered thousands of women. Granville T. Woods, often called the Black Edison, invented over 50 devices, including improvements to the telegraph and electrical railway systems that transformed transportation. Dr. Charles Drew developed methods to store blood plasma for transfusions, which made modern blood banks possible and saved thousands of lives during World War II. Lewis Latimer worked with Thomas Edison and invented the carbon filament that made the light bulb last longer and be practical for everyday use. These are just a few of the brilliant minds whose contributions shaped the world. Which Black inventor inspires you the most? Benjamin Banneker, a self-taught genius. In the quiet workshop of a young man in the 1750s, a story of ingenuity was taking shape. Benjamin Banneker, barely 22 years old, wasn't just whittling wood. He was carving cogs and gears with an almost impossible precision, piece by piece. He assembled them into the complex inner workings of a striking clock machine designed to chime every hour on the dot. For his time, it was a breathtaking feat. Striking clocks had existed for centuries, but Banneker's may have been the first ever built entirely in America, and it was a marvel. Using only his own calculations and a pocket knife, his careful engineering worked flawlessly. This clock became a symbol of his brilliance, drawing fascinated visitors from all over the country and chiming faithfully for the rest of his life. Born in 1731, Banneker was a free Black man living on a farm in Baltimore, Maryland. He was obsessed with math and science. He taught himself astronomy, mathematics, engineering, and the study of the natural world. As an adult, he used astronomy to accurately predict lunar and solar events, like the solar eclipse of 1789. His mathematical skills also helped him with land use planning. In 1791, A businessman named Andrew Ellicott hired him to help plan the layout of the nation's new capital, Washington, D.C. Banneker also used his scientific knowledge to improve farming. He even studied the life cycle of locusts. In 1792, Banneker began publishing almanacs. These books provided annual information on moon and sun cycles, weather forecasts, and planting times. He sent a copy of his first almanac to Thomas Jefferson, who would later become president. Along with the almanac, Banneker included a letter asking Jefferson to fight against prejudice toward black people. Jefferson read the almanac and wrote back, praising Banneker's work. Banneker's letter is considered one of the first civil rights protest letters in America. He continued to fight against slavery through his writing for the rest of his life. Benjamin Banneker died in 1806 at the age of 75. On the day of his funeral, his house mysteriously burned down, and most of his life's work was destroyed. Though many of his personal papers are gone, the impact of his mind lives on. From the chiming of his clock to the precise layout of our nation's capital, Benjamin Banneker left an undeniable mark on America's legacy of brilliance, curiosity, and a tireless fight for justice. His story reminds us that true genius can emerge from anywhere, and that the pursuit of knowledge and equality is a powerful force that can quite literally shape a nation.
Did you know California once had a black governor, long before it was even part of the United States? His name was Pio Pico, born in 1801 in what's now Los Angeles. He was of African, Native, and Spanish descent, a proud Afro-Mexican who rose to power during a time of massive change. Pio Pico became the last Mexican governor of Alta California, ruling the region just before the U.S. took it over in 1848. Under his leadership, California's population grew, trade expanded, and he defended his land against both foreign invasion and local corruption. But when the U.S. seized California, everything changed. His vast lands, from San Diego to Los Angeles, were taken through fraud and force. By the time he died in 1894, the once powerful governor had lost nearly everything. Still, Pio Pico's legacy lives on, a black man who led California before it was America, and whose story reminds us that black history runs deeper than the borders we know today.
They said slavery ended in 1865, but the truth is, it never really ended. It simply changed its name. After emancipation, thousands of black men, women, and even children were arrested on false charges, vagrancy, loitering, petty theft, crimes they often never committed. Courts and sheriffs turned these arrests into profit. Through a system called convict leasing, innocent black people were leased out to plantations, railroads, and mines. They were forced to work in brutal conditions, worse than slavery itself, because now they weren't even considered property worth protecting. They were disposable labor. Families were torn apart, generations lost. And yet, this history is rarely told. Today, we are setting the record straight. These men and women were not criminals. They were victims of a system designed to keep them chained, long after slavery was declared over. Convict leasing reminds us of a painful truth. Freedom on paper does not always mean freedom in reality, and it forces us to ask, how many of our systems today still carry the shadow of this injustice?
In 690 BCE, a young Kushite king named Taharka rose to power. He was not Egyptian by birth, he was Nubian, from the kingdom of Kush in what is now Sudan. But Taharka became pharaoh of Egypt, ruling from the great city of Thebes. At Karnak, the vast temple complex of the god Amun, Taharka left his mark. He built massive columns and shrines that still stand today, reminders of a time when black pharaohs ruled the Nile. Taharka's reign was one of both glory and struggle. He expanded Egypt's influence deep into the Near East, but he also faced constant threats from the mighty Assyrian Empire. The Bible itself remembers him. In the Book of Kings, Taharka is named as the king of Kush who rose to challenge the Assyrians during their siege of Jerusalem. Though eventually forced back to Nubia, Taharka's legacy endured. He preserved Egypt's traditions, strengthened African power, and left monuments that echo across millennia. Taharqa was more than a pharaoh. He was a symbol of African kingship, resilience, and the black legacy written in stone at Karnak.
What if the most beautiful places are the ones we've never heard of? What if a town, named for the deep pink of its cedar trees, could disappear from the map and from history books in just a few days? This is the story of Rosewood, a place that was more than just a name. It was a thriving community, a testament to resilience, until a single lie set a fire that would burn it to the ground, leaving a scar that America is still grappling with today. The town of Rosewood was a small, self-sufficient town in Florida. It was a close-knit community where most of the residents were black. They had their own school, churches, and businesses, living separate but peaceful lives next to the white community in the neighboring town of Sumner. The start of the tragedy began on January 1, 1923. A white woman from Sumner, Fannie Taylor, claimed she had been attacked by a black man. Her story, which was never proven, quickly spread, and a mob of angry white men was formed. This mob was not just looking for a man. They were looking for revenge. A black woman named Sarah Carrier, who worked for the Taylor family, knew the truth. She said she saw a white man leaving Fannie's house that morning. She believed Fannie was lying to cover up an affair. But in the 1920s, a white woman's word was taken as truth, and Sarah's story was ignored. A community destroyed the mob. Now a large group of men began a violent search. They started by torturing and murdering an innocent black man named Sam Carter. This act ignited the true beginning of the massacre. The mob then went to Sarah Carrier's house, where many black women and children had gathered for safety. Sarah's son, Sylvester Carrier, defended his family and his home, leading to a shootout. He killed 2 white men, but in the end, he and his mother were also killed. Fueled by rage, the mob grew to over 200 armed men, some from the Ku Klux Klan. They systematically burned down all of the black-owned homes, businesses, and churches in Rosewood. The entire town was destroyed. Some white residents like John Wright helped black families hide and escape. But many people were murdered. On the last day, the mob killed James Carrier, Sarah's brother, by shooting him in the local cemetery. By the time the violence ended, the entire town of Rosewood was gone. The aftermath official count of the dead was 8 people, but the real number is believed to be much higher. A grand jury, made up of all white people, was held, but no one was ever charged or arrested for the murders or the destruction of the town. All of the records were lost or destroyed. Decades later, in 1994, the state of Florida finally acknowledged the Rosewood massacre and voted to compensate the survivors and their descendants. The story of Rosewood for too long was a forgotten piece of history. The story of Rosewood isn't just a historical event. It's a mirror. It forces us to ask how a lie can become an excuse for a massacre, and why some stories are buried while others are celebrated. By remembering Rosewood, we honor the lives that were lost and the community that was silenced. We ensure that this painful chapter of history, once forgotten, is now a permanent part of our collective memory.
Did you know one of the most iconic voices in soul music almost never made it big? Born in Philadelphia in 1946, Frankie Beverly started in church choirs and doo-wop groups before forming his band Raw Soul. They had talent, but not the spotlight. That changed when Marvin Gaye heard them, moved them to San Francisco, and renamed them Maze featuring Frankie Beverly. In the 1970s and 80s, Maze created a sound like no other smooth grooves, deep soul, and timeless anthems like Joy and Pain, Golden Time of Day, and We Are One. And then there's Before I Let Go, still the soundtrack to family reunions, barbecues, and cookouts across America. Frankie Beverly's story isn't about chart numbers, it's about connection. For nearly 50 years, his voice has been the sound of love, unity, and celebration. Frankie Beverly isn't just a singer, he's the heartbeat of a culture.
They say Fort Blakely was the final clash of the Civil War. White Union soldiers storming the Confederate lines in one last push for victory. That's the story you'll see in most reenactments today. But that story is wrong. Those weren't white men who fought that way. They were black men, our ancestors, United States colored troops, who gave everything for freedom and the Union. This is an important story to tell because history has been whitewashed. Search YouTube or visit most reenactments, and you'll rarely see the truth. That black soldiers were the driving force behind the Union's victory at Fort Blakely. It's time to reclaim that history. April 9th, 1865. While Lee surrendered at Appomattox, another fierce battle raged at Fort Blakely, Alabama. But modern historical portrayals sometimes miss a crucial truth. Footage sometimes shows white soldiers in these ranks. But at Fort Blakely, nearly one-third of the attacking Union force, over 5,000 men, were United States colored troops. These black soldiers, fighting not just for the Union but for their own freedom, delivered a crushing blow to the Confederacy. In less than 30 minutes, they charged through enemy fire, overran the Confederate defenses, and helped capture more than 3,000 enemy troops. Fort Blakely stands as a powerful testament to their courage. The USCT were victorious, their valor undeniable, securing not just a fort, but their rightful place in American history. Honor the true heroes of Fort Blakely.
What if I told you the first person to die for America's freedom wasn't a famous founding father, but a black man? His name was Crispus Attucks. In 1770, Boston was boiling with anger. British soldiers filled the streets, enforcing laws and taxes the colonists hated. Among the angry crowd that night stood a tall sailor, a man of African and native ancestry who had escaped slavery years earlier. Crispus Attucks knew oppression firsthand. He worked the docks and ships of New England, fighting just to live free. On the night of March 5th, 1770, he joined other colonists confronting British troops outside the customs house. Shouts turned to violence. Snowballs, clubs, and insults filled the air. Then gunfire. Attucks was the first to fall, shot twice in the chest. That moment became known as the Boston Massacre, and his blood was the first spilled in what would become the American Revolution. The first man to die for our country's freedom was a black man. Attucks' death sparked outrage and unity across the colonies. His sacrifice lit a fuse that would lead to independence 6 years later. And yet, his name is rarely mentioned alongside Washington, Jefferson, or Adams. But let's be clear, we as Black Americans were here from the very beginning. We were part of the fight for freedom before there even was a United States. Crispus Attucks proved that. He stood for liberty at a time when his own people were denied it. His courage reminds us that our story, the Black American story, is woven into the foundation of this country. Crispus Attucks wasn't just the first to die in the Revolution. He was the first to show that the struggle for freedom in America has always been tied to us. They don't teach this part of American history, the fancy trade. Octoroon balls. Young black women sold not for labor, but for their bodies. And yet, you'll barely find a whisper of it in textbooks. But today, we're unlocking what was never meant to be told. In the 1800s, a dark and hidden corner of the slave market emerged across cities like New Orleans, St. Louis, and Richmond. It was known as the fancy trade, the selling of light-skinned enslaved women and girls for sexual exploitation. Many of these women were described by slave traders using racist categories like mulatto, quadroon, and octoroon, labels created to classify and price human beings based on how close they appeared to whiteness. This trade wasn't small. It was a booming, profitable industry. Girls as young as 12 or 13 were sold at 10 times the price of field laborers, not because they were valued, but because they were targeted. Quadroon and octoroon balls became social events where wealthy white men chose young mixed-race women for long-term sexual arrangements called placeage. These were not equal relationships. They were built on power, coercion, and the complete lack of freedom. The fancy trade exposes a truth America still struggles to face. Slavery wasn't just an economic system. It was a system of sexual violence, exploitation, and generational trauma. And the descendants of these women live today, many without knowing the full story of how their ancestors survived. The fancy trade wasn't a footnote. It shaped families, cities, and American society in ways people rarely acknowledge. Remember their names. Remember their strength. Remember the truth. Like
when most people look at the Statue of Liberty, they see a symbol of freedom, a gift from France to America. But what if I told you? The statue was originally meant to honor the freedom of enslaved Black people after the Civil War. This is the Black Vault, and today we're unlocking the hidden Black history behind the Statue of Liberty. The year was 1865. The Civil War had just ended, and slavery in the United States was finally abolished. Across the Atlantic, a French historian named Édouard René de la Boulaye, a strong supporter of Abraham Lincoln, proposed, building a monument to celebrate the end of slavery and the triumph of liberty. He imagined a statue that would symbolize freedom, justice, and the breaking of chains. America, fresh out of a brutal civil war, had shown the world that democracy could defeat slavery. So Laboulaye and sculptor Frederick August Bartholdi began designing what would become the Statue of Liberty. Early versions of the statue looked very different from what we see today. In the original sketches, Lady Liberty had broken shackles and chains at her feet, symbolizing the end of slavery. Some early models even showed her holding the broken chains in her hand. But as time went on, the message changed. By the 1870s, America was trying to move past the Civil War, and the painful memory of slavery was being buried under talk of reunion and progress. Bartholdi kept the broken chains, but moved them down to her feet, almost out of sight. Most visitors today never even notice them. Look closely. Next time you see the Statue of Liberty, you'll find broken shackles and a broken chain near her right foot. They're not decoration, they're a symbol of freedom from slavery. When the statue was finally unveiled in 1886, many Black newspapers and leaders saw the irony. The monument that was supposed to celebrate Black freedom stood tall, while racism, segregation, and injustice still plagued the nation. The Black press at the time asked, "What is liberty when the colored man is denied his rights?" And they were right. For millions of Black Americans, liberty was still a dream, not a reality. But the meaning of the statue couldn't be erased. Its roots, born from the end of slavery, still tell a powerful story. That liberty in America was not complete until Black people were free. So, when you look at the Statue of Liberty, remember, she wasn't just a gift of friendship. She was a reminder of a promise that freedom belongs to Black Americans too.
Thank you for exploring hidden Black American history with the Black Vault.
Like and subscribe for more History Unlocked.
Help us continue this mission. Donate through CashApp, $, the BLK Vault 365.